And we're live. Good evening, Shifties. Welcome back. Welcome back. Man, it's been a long time. It's been like a month or over a month. This is Shift the Journey. I'm your host, Tito Amogus. This is my show. I've been gone. I was gone for like I don't know, it was like 3 weeks. I was actually spending some time with family, had some vacation time. Went up to Nashville to visit the folks. Flew out to California. Went on a cruise to Cabo. Went all over California. Went back to Nashville. Came back and got a respiratory infection. Now here we are, about a week later, and I'm okay. I may have some coughing fits. I'm going to try to mute myself so that it doesn't like completely affect the broadcast. But anyway, if you've never watched the show, what is Shift the Journey? What is it? Well, I'm a career shifter. I'm not ashamed to say that, and it's not a bad thing. It's just so I served 20 years in the U.S. Air Force, and then when I got out, I was like, I can't afford to live on this. So then I decided, hey, I'm going to go into something else, and so I had some really, really good people like walk me through some different things of what I needed to do to get a job in the corporate world. And after some time, I did that, and then I've been working in the corporate world since. It's been just over, just over 9 years. Yeah, so 9 years of not shaving my face clean. Mike and I were just having that conversation in the studio where we're like talking about facial hair. Man, I forgot to tell you, I started with a goatee. I was like, you know what? This is my goal. I'm going to grow a goatee. But one thing I didn't take into account was the fact that I'm Filipino. And I mean, you think I would have known because I was like 40 already. So, but like my mustache didn't meet my beard for like a year and a half. And when it finally did, I was like, oh, I'm just going to grow it out. So I started doing that. And then I kind of got tired of it. But my wife's like, you're never shaving that. So she likes it. So here we are. So anyway, our guest today is Mike Pattin. Mike and I go way back, actually. He was at my first duty station when I got there. I want to say you were a senior airman when I first got there. I got there in like, I don't know, late summer of 96.
Okay,
Fairchild Air Force Base,
that would
second
add
support
up because
squadron.
I got there 93.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So, and then I I left in what year was that? I left in November of 1998. PCS to Keesler because I was retraining, and I never saw you again. And then like you reached out, I don't know, a couple
I
months ago,
know it's
right?
crazy. I was
You're like, hey, uh,
right.
you're like, I don't know if you remember me. I'm like, I actually saw you when I had connected with somebody. I saw your name on there on Facebook. I was like, oh, I'm gonna friend this guy. And then you're like, I don't know if you remember me. I'm like, bro, I sent you the friend request, but it's okay.
Well, but you know how that is. Sometimes you never know because there's people that just accept friend requests from whoever sends it to them.
Right.
So I was like, I'll ask this guy if he
Yeah,
remembers
no,
who
that's
I
true.
am. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's been a long time
Yeah.
ago. It's crazy how
Okay,
quick it
well that
goes
makes more
by.
sense.
30 years already. Can you believe
Yeah.
that?
Yep. Yeah. No, that's nuts. I mean, I remember helping helping somebody move. I thought I was moving something with Don Hood. We're moving like a refrigerator or something out of your house. You had your little girl was like 3 or something, and like she's like yapping at us or whatever. And then you just said you have grandkids, so that tells me that I'm old.
Yeah, I just had two more, so I've got
That tells
three
me that
total
you're
now.
old too.
Yeah,
Oh my
it turned 50
gosh,
this
that's
year,
awesome.
so yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy. It goes by
All right.
quick, but
Yeah, so like where are you from originally? I thought you were from I know you live in New Mexico. I thought you were from New Mexico.
I am. So I'm
Are you?
from
Eh,
like my dad. I live in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. It's just a smaller city right outside Albuquerque. Um, my dad, he lives in Rio Rancho. He's about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 miles from where I live,
cool.
and he's been there since I was in mid school. So he's in the same house. That's where I went to middle school and high school, and I graduated from here, and then obviously joined the military like right out of high school.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
in
Yeah.
fact, it
So,
was like within a month or so of graduating, I went to
oh,
Mets and did it. I was on a delayed enlistment thing for about 6 months, so I didn't leave for
yeah.
boot camp until January, but I was signed up ready to go in like June.
So was that something like was joining the military something that was on your radar early in life, or was it something that you like came upon later?
So I thought about it, but it wasn't like throughout high school I planned on joining the military necessarily, but I wasn't really sure what route I was gonna go.
Hmm.
But the military was an option. I saw an Army recruiter in high school once, and that's about the extent of that. I ended up determining I think Air Force would probably be better. I had family members that had been in it before, and
Hmm.
uh, I just thought, I think the Air Force would suit me better. So I ended up meeting with a recruiter, and it just kind of went that direction. I knew I wasn't going to go to college right out of high school.
Yeah.
One, I was not a very good student in high school. I kind of, my grades dropped a little bit. I just was ready to be done with it. And then for me, it was like college really wasn't going to be an option at that point.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm like, well, I need to do something. And I thought the Air Force would be a pretty good path. And it'll give me 4 years to figure out what I want to do. If I don't end up liking
Right.
it, I can
4 years.
take a different path after 4 years. And then, of course, that turned into a 20-year career. But
Yeah. So many of us are like, listen, I'm only here for one enlistment, man. I got plans, right?
right. Yeah, I
So,
mean, and that's the good thing, I knew a lot of guys that I came in with that did 4 years, 6 years, whatever. It wasn't for them; they got out. And
yeah.
but the thing is, there's a lot of opportunity in the military, and I I have zero regrets. Like it's one of the best decisions I've ever made
Oh,
was
yeah.
going into the Air Force and doing a 20-year career. I mean, it was great. I don't and it set me up even for after retirement because I've been involved still with things that were related to my career field. So
Hmm.
it's actually helped me out after as well. So yeah, it's
Wow.
been good.
That's cool. So, how did you get into your career field? Did you choose
Um,
that?
yeah, I did. So when I went to the recruiter, this was after they evaluate your ASVAB scores and all that. Basically, he just told me, "Here's the jobs that you're eligible for. Go through them and pick a bunch, and we'll see what we can do."
Right.
Um, and I ended up picking, weapon maintainer, and I thought that sounds pretty cool. I think that could be a pretty good job.
Hmm.
And he got me in on that one. It was pretty much my first choice. I knew I didn't want anything. I knew enough about the Air Force where I'm like, I don't think I want to work anywhere around near planes because now I have the potential for being gone or deployed all the time, which is not what I wanted because I was coming in at 18. I was coming in ready with my first child.
Oh, wow.
So it was important that I tried to get something that wouldn't have me gone all the time. And I didn't know. I mean, he could have lied to me and told me, "Oh yeah, you'll never go anywhere with this job, so it would be perfect."
Hmm.
So it was a roll of the dice, but luckily I ended up in a job that was the case. You spend 5, 6 years at one base. You very rarely would deploy unless you volunteered for something. And so
Hmm.
for me, it was perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, that
But
the
yeah, I came
deployment
in
life.
with it.
Uh-oh, you're breaking up a little bit. I was trying to figure out if the breaking up is you or if it's me. Um, and I think you're frozen.
Am I frozen?
Yeah, well, you broke up a little bit, but I got the gist of what you were saying. that you're, the working on aircraft because, working like I started out working on missiles and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna, work on aircraft. One of the things I was looking for was someplace warmer. And then also I was looking for not that like Fairchild was the coldest place in the world, but for me,
No.
I was just 1 year removed from living in the Philippines for a year. So this is kind of cold. But I was, a young airman with a wife and a small child, and I was looking for something that would get me a really good reenlistment bonus. And my current career field wasn't it. I didn't take into account
No,
though.
that you know they do that now.
What's
Uh,
that?
they're getting rid of this now for those career fields because things have changed over the years. But yeah, I'm with you. You know, when we came in at the same time, none of that was out there. It was kind of that they didn't, but that definitely they enlisted up to like 14 years.
Hang on, man. Hang on. You're like breaking up really badly. I want to I want to check to see if it's my network or if it's your network cuz like oh no, he's gone. I would guess that that was his network. Um but I mean the gist of the conversation is yeah, there was when you're a young airman and you're um trying to find some good solutions for making more money. I was drawn by the prospects of being deployed or TDY all the time, going on these business trips, right? You get paid per diem and then, you get whatever, different things. But it actually, it doesn't really work out like that a lot of times. Mike,
I'm back. Let's hope this worked.
all right, yeah. I so I was just telling everybody in the time that you were gone, I was just saying that I was a young airman and I had a wife and a child and I was trying to find, solutions for, making more money. And one of the things was like, hey, reenlistment bonus. This other career field is super undermanned. I didn't think in my head the reason why they're super undermanned is because like it's really hard being gone all the time. And so I ended up being gone all the time. And the divorce rate before you hit 30 in some of those career fields where people are gone all the time, oh, it's awful. But let's get back to your story. So you chose weapon systems and it turns out, you're
Yeah.
working on what
So
exactly? What does that mean?
weapons maintainer. So I worked on the Alchem when I was at Fairchild, and then of course after that I spent a couple years overseas. I did 2 years in Italy. So I left Washington State in 1999. So I spent about almost 6 years there, I guess. And then I volunteered to go to
Nice.
to Italy.
Yeah.
So I spent 2 years there. That was an accompanied tour, so I was able to bring my family, which was great. And I didn't stay longer than two. I kind of
Yeah.
waited out, and I was unsure of where I would go after that. And I mean, I could have stayed in Europe, but I thought, I think I'm ready to come back to the States. So let me roll the dice and see what comes up. And ended up getting an assignment to F.E. Warren, which is in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I worked
Mm,
ICBM systems there, and a great assignment. Never spent any time in Wyoming. I knew it was close to Denver, and I knew it was about a day drive to come back home here to Albuquerque. So for me, that was a plus. I thought, oh, this
yeah.
is going to be way better because when we used to drive home to visit family in Albuquerque from
Ooh.
Washington, that's like 3 days.
Yeah.
And
Oh
back
yeah.
in the day, I'm not paying for plane tickets. I mean, the first couple
Right.
years in the military, you're not really making a lot of money, so you don't have
Yeah.
extra cash to just be blowing on airfare, and you gotta budget a little bit tighter. So
Right.
we would always drive
And
when we came back.
yeah, and not to mention that airport in Spokane is not very big. Didn't or
No,
wasn't very big, didn't have a lot of flights in and out of there. I would try to catch a flight home to California back then, and it was like really expensive. I ended up driving a couple of times, and yeah, it was like 24 hours straight driving, you know,
yeah,
bathroom
that's how it
breaks,
was with us.
whatever, but just
It was
driving.
like 20 something hours, I think, from Spokane to Albuquerque. So you could do it in 2 days, but we typically wouldn't. We'd break it up over three and get
Yeah,
hotels, and we're traveling with young kids, or at least my oldest daughter at the time. We
yeah.
didn't know have my youngest yet, but yeah. So it's like you can't kill yourself driving across the U.S. So we would always take about 2.5 days. So anyway, then I ended up in Wyoming after Italy,
Wow.
and loved it. Great assignment, like super small town. And back then, this would have been in 2001 because I was there from '01 to '05.
Mhm.
Only did 4 years, and back then we didn't even have to lock our door to our house. I mean, I parked my car outside, and most of the time, I don't think I even locked the car doors. I mean, crime was that low. Like nobody
Mhm.
was breaking into your house or your cars or anything like that. So
Did you have
um,
bears up there though?
no, not not in Cheyenne. I mean, if you drove to other areas of Wyoming, sure, but like
Yeah.
Cheyenne's it's a pretty decent sized city. I think
Oh, okay.
at the time it's like 60,000 or so was the
Okay.
population.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I loved it there. But I worked uh, I worked a missile system that ended up going away. So when that happened, they cut the manning in half.
Yeah.
And when that happens, they kind of look at how long you've been there, and they rack and stack everybody, right? And
Right.
basically they had a list of names, and they said these are the people that are getting assignments.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on the list, so I know I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But we had a chief at the time that was uh, basically told us all. He said, "Look, I can get every one of you guys a base of preference." He said, "I'll work it. You just tell me where you want to go. Give me one or two options, and we'll get you one of them." It's like,
Nice.
okay, this could work out pretty good. So I gave him two options. Kirtland was my first one, being from
Mhm.
Albuquerque. I thought, I've been in now for, I forget at the time, if I would have left there in '05, I'd have like 12 years in.
Yeah.
So I had about 12 years in. I'm like, okay, I'd like to go back home. That'd be cool. So I threw Kirtland on the list. And then, not knowing what I know now, I threw Nellis on the list, which it's in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I only did that because I thought, well, it's a dry climate. Like I like Vegas, it'd be a cool
Yeah.
place. If I couldn't get Kirkland, I would be pretty happy with that, I thought.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting Kirkland. Well, once I got here, within a year and a half, they were closing
Oh,
my job at Nellis. So all the guys that were there had to pick up and move a year and a half
oh,
later. So it worked out because at that
yeah.
point, it was the time where the housing market was not in good shape. So
Oh,
all
yeah.
those guys spent a bunch of money on houses, and now they
Mhm.
can't even get half of what they paid.
Yeah.
So now
Yep.
they're in a situation where it just got bad, right? That whole
Yeah.
scenario with the housing
Oh, yeah.
market crash and everything,
Yep. The
timing was
bubble.
not good. So I
Yeah.
lucked out getting Kirtland. So yeah, thankfully I didn't get my second choice, and then I got here in 2000. That would have been 2005,
Mhm.
and still active duty. Worked at uh, Worked at the munitions storage complex at Kirtland, and stayed there all the way till maybe 2011ish. So about
Mhm.
6 years. And I worked quality assurance for a year and a half, 2 years at that point too. But you're still at the unit, so you're going down and watching maintenance and stuff, evaluating. So I'm still involved. But then I thought, well, I don't want to get another assignment. Like, I'm getting close to retirement age here. If I want to punch at 20, which was kind of my plan, I wanted to stay here. So I put in for a special duty assignment my last 2 years, and it was over at the Air Force Inspection Agency. So now I'm going out on surety inspections and doing evaluations and stuff, and that locked me in for, it was actually, I think, 3 years. That locked me in for 36 months, which took me pretty close to 20 at that point.
Yeah.
And I said, this will all work out pretty good, I think. And then as I approached the 3-year point, because it's a special duty and because you're coded so that they can't PCS you while you're filling that position.
Right.
When the code gets removed from your name, you're hot for an assignment, and you're basically in a must PCS situation, so you have to move.
Yeah.
So I was in a situation where it's like, well, I stay in and I'm going to move. I already knew that. Or I retire and try to extend it, the Air Force Inspection Agency, for another 6 months. And I took option B. I got approved by my commander, and I stayed another 6 months. And I ended up retiring at 20 out of a FIA.
Nice. That's nice, man. Ooh, look at that.
A lot of this was timing. Most of the time when you're in the military, you don't have control of your career, right?
Right.
But as you approach the end, you have a little bit more control, because if they hit you up with an assignment, you only have a year left. It's like you can make things work in your favor, but it may end up meaning that you're going to be forced to retire. If you planned on staying in longer, now that's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was sort of the situation I was in, and I knew I had gotten heads up that because I had an overseas return date of 2001, that I was hot to go back overseas. So I kind of was being told by some of the chiefs in the career field and stuff that basically they can't get volunteers to go to Turkey. So guess where you're going? And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Not at that point. No. My kids were older.
Unaccompanied,
I had a daughter in high school. What's that? You there?
To Turkey, it would have been.
Yeah, that would have been unaccompanied.
You can't hear me?
That would have been unaccompanied, and I think at that point. Yeah, I can hear you. That would have been like 24 months. I think they had even talked about longer than that, and I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that. Like, I have a daughter in high school. She's going to be graduating. That would have interrupted, her in school as well. So anyway, I ended up going the route of retirement. And I knew I wanted to be in Albuquerque anyway. So it's like, okay, well, at least I know I'm going to be where I want to live, right? We already had a house we're settled in. My wife runs a small business. Like, it was going to be better to go ahead and retire and stay here. The problem with that is that I didn't have anything lined up. So I'm not 100% sure exactly what it is I'm going to do. And for a while, I thought that, well, worst case scenario, I just retire and I'll just go to school full time. I still have GI Bill benefits. They'll pay you. They'll basically pay you to go to school, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I thought, well, worst case scenario, if nothing pops up that I'm interested in, I'll just enroll in school full time and become a full time student for a while until something else pops up. So I ended up not having to do that. Because about 2 months prior to retirement, I had an ex-coworker reach out to me and tell me that there was a contractor job here in Albuquerque, and if I was interested. So of course, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm interested. That's great timing. I'll be retiring here in a couple months, so perfect timing, right?
Yeah.
So I went ahead and submitted a resume and interviewed and everything, and they basically said, yeah, we're going to offer you a position, pending once you retire your own terminal leave, you can start working for us. So that was a company called Excelis. They've renamed themselves. They do a lot of government contract work as
Yeah.
far as supporting defense contracts and stuff like that. The job that I got into was like an administrative job, but we set up a lot of meetings and invites, and then I had to take meeting minutes for whichever programs I was supporting, stuff like that. So a lot of administrative work.
Yeah.
But it was a job, and so I'm not turning down. Like, to me, it was an opportunity that presented itself that I was going to take advantage of, right?
Yeah.
So I went ahead and did it, and I think I was only there for about 3 months.
Really?
Because when I had applied for that job, there was another government civilian job that had popped up that I applied for. I didn't know if I would get it, and that whole process takes forever. I mean, when you apply for a government job, it can be I've heard of guys 5-6 months later getting notified. So it can be a very lengthy process, right? So I kind of I took the contractor job with the mindset that if the civilian job ever materialized, I'll cross that bridge when I get there, right? So it ended up happening. I didn't get an interview. They didn't do interviews, so the hiring official opted to not do interviews. He knew the candidates already. The only there were like 4 people that made the cert list. He knew all 4 candidates, so I guess they felt they didn't need to conduct an interview. They would just do resume only.
Wow.
So they just did the resumes. They scored them. There was 2 positions available, and they offered me one of the 2 positions, and I took it.
Wow.
So that's how I got into government service as a GS employee, and that was in like May of 2013 when I retired. I retired in January of 2013, and I started that job in May. And
really, I thought there was a 6-month cooling off period.
No, back then there wasn't. Back then you could get hired directly in. That came later. So now there is what they call a cooling off period, and I think it's 6 months. It might be a year. They might have upped it to a year. I don't
remember. I know there was a cooling off period, but I don't know. Yeah, don't quote me on that. I don't know if it's 6 months.
No, there's definitely, you're accurate. There's definitely a cooling off period. I just don't remember if it's 6 months or a year. It might be only 6 months, but back then there was no cooling off period. So, the whole reason they implemented that was to avoid guys retiring and getting a position in the same thing they were doing. Like, you could work those type of deals back then. You could retire and get hired directly into government service, like right out the gate. And I think they determined that's not really how this should work, and so they added that cooling off period thing.
Yeah, I think that demonstrates or can demonstrate like favoritism, or some behind the scenes stuff, almost like, I don't know, corruption. I guess, I don't know, because anytime money is involved, right? Then that's like, it's not extra, but it's like, do you have a leg up on the competition when maybe you shouldn't? Maybe somebody else is more qualified, but they
can set themselves up to be the only qualified candidate. If they just got out of that organization or that position, they could totally set it up to where when they apply for the civilian job, they're the only ones that look qualified.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So there is no competition at that point, because they're going to say, well, this guy was doing the job, so clearly he's the most qualified to continue doing it, right? So, so I did that. Now I've been
I remember seeing people people like in uniform, and then they would go on terminal leave, and then a couple weeks they come in and they're wearing civilian clothes, and they're
Right.
doing the same job that they did when they
Yeah.
were in, and it's like, what? And they're still on terminal leave, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
bro,
I
you're
know.
making so much money.
Yeah. So they kind of got rid of that with the cooling off thing, but so I've been a government employee since 2013, but I haven't worked for the same organization. I've worked for three different organizations during that time.
Okay.
One was originally it was the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center is who hired me when I first retired after the contract gig that I did for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I worked for them, and then they ended up that position that I had ended up getting taken over by a Global Strike Command.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so that wasn't like I applied for another job and got it. That was just taken over by another command.
Yeah.
Um, but it's still two different commands, but
Yeah.
it was the same job. Well,
Yeah.
then they dissolved the position. This was way later. They dissolved the position. And so I was basically put into another position at Global Strike Command that I didn't necessarily apply for, just that my manager said, you're qualified for this position. Your position no longer exists. We're putting you here. So I did that for like 6 months, and it was working with a bunch of EOD guys. I was basically a program manager for some EOD, different EOD programs at Global Strike Command. I didn't do that long
Okay.
because a job opened up where I work currently at Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA, and it was a Navy program manager. And I'm like, well, let's see what happens. I know nothing about the Navy, being an Air Force guy, but I'll apply for the position and
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. And sure enough, I mean, I applied for it. There was like two of us that made it, or there was multiple people that made the cert list, but only two of us ended up um, getting interviews. So they basically dwindled the list down, right? So two of us got interviewed. I thought there's no way. I left the interview thinking, well, I didn't get that because I didn't think the interview went well. And then they
Yeah.
offered me the job. So, but
Oh,
that's the thing. When you
somebody
go
was a
in
good
an interview,
actor.
and I tell everybody this, like I talk to a lot of guys that are newly retired. I try to give them pointers and stuff when they're looking for jobs as well. I'm like, look, you may think you didn't do good in the interview when you leave, but you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
Um, as long as you keep everything organized and you do the best you can, like you might walk out of there thinking I kind of bombed it, but um, clearly I didn't, or they wouldn't have offered me the position. And then I even had guys later tell me like you did pretty good on that interview, So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it's just one of those things. You're your worst critic,
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah, definitely.
you're always gonna think you didn't do as good as you probably did. You did a lot better than you're thinking. So that
Yeah.
that was how that worked out. And then I've been at DTRA since then, and I
Yeah.
don't know how many years it's been. I'm coming up on I think probably 5 years there or so at this
Yeah.
point, maybe a little longer, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Um,
So I mean, it sounds like you had all these things like, rolling at the same time and then just lining up for you, when you needed them to line up for you.
yeah.
What was like the biggest what was your biggest challenge in transitioning from military to civilian?
So that's funny. You would think that it would be difficult, and when I talk to people, they share like all the things they went through, and it can be challenging, and you might not find employment for a year, the first year you're out or whatever. For me, I don't know that I was even comprehending. It's probably just like I didn't even think about it. I just
Mhm.
retired, and I probably should have been a lot more nervous than I was. And well, you know what I'm saying? Like I probably should have put. You would think, oh well, there should have been challenges. You should have been a little nervous, but for some reason, it was just like I had the confidence that something would come along.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm like, if I search for it, something will end up popping up. I'll just really work hard to put my name out there and look for something, you know?
Yeah.
So I can't remember looking back. I can't remember any points in time where I was worried or like, concerned or anything. And then now that could have changed. That could have changed if I would have retired in 2013 and didn't have anything lined up.
Yeah.
If I would have retired and then a month, 2 months into terminal leave, I'm like, damn, I still don't have a job. Like this is this is now starting to get a little worrisome because I'll be off terminal leave here shortly and I won't be getting a paycheck anymore other than my retirement pay, which is nowhere near what you were making before, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I think if I would have got to that point, it would have been a lot different. But because I had that opportunity presented to me to be a contractor a couple months prior, I never went through that whole transition process like a lot of people would. And that's the thing. I'm still, I'm still commuting to Kirtland Air Force Base every day. Well, I had been doing that for 8 years, so there's no change there. I worked with a bunch of military guys that were in uniform still. So like I'm used to that coming from active duty. So that's not that there's nothing to have to adjust to on that side.
Yeah.
So it made the transition real easy. Had I retired and then tried to go into a completely different career path, I don't know. Let's just say I got my real estate license and wanted to go sell houses.
Yeah.
I'm sure the transition would have been a lot worse because it's like new to me, right? Now I'm in a completely new environment, and in the military, people don't probably realize it, but you are a little sheltered. You're not used to civilian life. It's totally different. Like I can remember getting taxed on my full paycheck the first time I was in the contract job. I'm like, oh, I'm not even used to paying full taxes because when you're active duty, you're getting allowances and that's half the pay right there, and none of that gets taxed.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. It's like, oh, you mean I actually pay taxes on my entire paycheck? What the hell is this about? You know?
That's funny. Well, I mean, that's a I think you could roll that up as one good piece of advice for somebody who's like, say, midstream somewhere, in the military, and they're like, oh, what do I want to do? Especially with, technical jobs. I know plenty of people who retired from aircraft maintenance and then they went into aircraft maintenance, and the transition was not as hard. But I'll tell you, going from even though so I had a desk job. My last job in the Air Force was a desk job. It was a data analyst position at a training headquarters at Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi. But when I got out, it was, I moved to a whole nother city. And then I went into the corporate world, and it was completely different because Nashville, the closest military bases to Nashville are Arnold Air Force Station, which is like an hour and a half away, and it's very small, and it's a test center, like an engineering center, and Fort Campbell, which is on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky, and it's like an hour and a half away. But everybody that I worked with, of all the people that I worked with a few veterans who got out of the military when I was in like grade school, like first grade. And then there were people like my peers, people at my like job level, they're all half my age. And most of them are like, oh yeah, I think my grandfather was in the Army. Were you in the Army? You were in the Navy? And I was like, Air Force. And they're like, oh, it's all the same. And I'm like, oh, no, it's not.
It's not the same at all.
Yeah, not even close. But yeah, so like if if you're anybody out there, if you're in the military, if you're active duty and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, you can. There are resources out there for people who are trying to go into the corporate world. There are people out there who'd love to help you out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But yeah, no, it was not easy. It was not easy. And sometimes I think like, oh, I wonder what that would have been like. But then I didn't like working on airplanes, so I'm okay.
Right. Yeah, so I there were
It's like I was in the career field for for a long time, but I'm okay.
yeah, there was a point where I thought, well, maybe I don't want to keep doing what I was doing before, like related to that same, skill set. Maybe I want to go do something else. And I did think about that. But at the end of the day, it was just like, I
Mhm.
mean, I've got 20 years experience at this point. You have a security clearance. Like these things all help
Right.
you
Yeah.
with employment out after you retire. And Kirtland's a great place for that because there's a lot of jobs here um, that directly relates to. So for me, it was a no-brainer to just go ahead and do that for now. And then if I change my
Yeah.
mind, I could always make a go a different route. But I still like doing it. It's stable. I'm not a super. I'm the type of guy that is very like I like routine. So
Hmm.
I'm good with not doing a bunch of different stuff. I like doing the
Yeah.
same thing every day. I'm just a routine person. It's like when I get
Hmm.
up, I have the same routine every day. When I get off
Yeah.
work, same routine every day. Like I like to have everything very scheduled.
Yeah.
So some people might get tired of doing the same thing for a long period of time, but for me, I guess it's like it's a comfort thing.
Hmm.
I'm comfortable
Yeah.
doing this. I still like doing it, so there's no reason for me to try to take a new career path or anything. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I've talked to guys that were getting ready to retire, and this is recent, like in the last couple of years that I've been retired in the as a civilian employee, and I tried to help them out, to make that transition a little bit easier. If I hear about jobs that pop up, I try to share it with guys that I know that are getting ready to retire. Like, hey, if you want to
Yeah.
stay living in Albuquerque, here's a couple positions that are opening up that you could apply for. You'd be a perfect candidate.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's just one of those things. Like, it's good to try to help people with their
Yeah.
transition. It's
Oh
hard
yeah.
enough. There was people that looked out for me throughout my career and even after, that helped
Mhm.
give me pointers, and even some of these were leads from guys that I knew. So if
Yeah.
I can do that for people, like I I don't have a problem doing that. Like that's the right thing to do, right? So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, man. I love doing that stuff too. I got people asking me, all kinds of questions because like how do you get from point A to point B really? Like
yeah,
20 years in the military to, consulting in the civilian world. It's just it's a it's a journey. It really is. But listen, man, I really enjoyed having you on here. It was good seeing you after I don't know what's it been. It was like 30 years, almost
well,
pretty close,
yeah.
right?
So dude, it's been 30 because I left Washington in 2000 1990. What year am I even thinking of here now? I left in
Yeah.
99. I left
No,
there, but I
I
got
left in '98, so it's been
okay. Oh,
20. Listen, oh, so my last day there was the day after Thanksgiving. And so,
okay,
like, Thanksgiving week of 1998 was, like, my last work day. I
and
remember
I
that.
think I left in summer. I left in summer of '99.
Yeah, so 26 years, man. That's a long enough time,
It's a
you
long
know?
time, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you were but a boy when I left, but, no, I'm just joking.
Yeah. No, but it's crazy because it goes by so quick. It's like I
Yeah,
can remember things that far back where I'm like, are you kidding me? When I start thinking about it, I'm like, there's no way. It's been 30 years already. Like that's
yeah,
insane. I can't even,
yeah.
it's hard to comprehend. So life
Yeah,
goes by quick.
I really wanted to go to the 2SS reunion, but I had some, like, family stuff and I couldn't make it. And
Right.
I was like, I saw the pictures and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," some of the people, it's like I hadn't seen them in forever, but others, I'm like, I don't even know who these people are. But it's funny, like looking at the pictures and thinking about like when we were in storage and handling, and it
Hmm.
was all these like mess of senior airmen, and then a bunch of us who are like 1 and 2 stripers. And I got in so much trouble. But you
So
know
I,
what? That's the topic for another show.
we may have been in handling at the same time, I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You're
Because
always hanging out with Mike Scher, and Mike Scher
yeah,
was my
Mike there.
boss,
Yeah.
and he was my boss
And
for a while, my
Danny
supervisor.
Franco.
Yep,
Do you remember him?
Danny.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
was a couple of those guys that came in around the same time as me. You know, Mike Shears has since passed.
yes, I saw
Yeah,
that. I was sad.
it's been a number of years now.
Yeah,
Again, time goes by so quick. I
yep,
feel like it was recent, but it's probably been 10 years at this point.
yeah,
Um, Great guy. That was a sad deal. Died way too young.
yeah.
And it puts things in perspective
Oh,
because
yeah,
honestly,
definitely.
you can't. You got to take every day like it could be, your last. So it's important to capitalize. And I look more at that even now, having grandkids, because as you're getting older, it's like, man, I'd like to be around for a little longer. So
Yeah, definitely,
yeah, it's
definitely.
crazy, but yeah, it flies by, man, crazy. And storage and handling, that was a good time.
Yeah,
I liked being there. I liked coming to work, and we'd get our work orders and basically go get our job done that day.
yep,
Like
yep,
it was great. Yeah, so I have pretty good memories of that. Liked working
yeah,
there for sure.
yeah. Joel Fox is another one who was there. Rich Robinson was on his way out. I got there around the same time as Don Hood, Justin Lee,
Okay,
um,
yeah.
Greg Martinez, Robert Binns, those guys. So that was just like dropping all the names. So anyway,
Yeah, there was a
um,
lot of them, man. I think you mentioned Joel. I
yeah,
think he ended
it
up
was a good
becoming an
time,
officer.
and part of
I was
yeah,
just going to say he
yeah,
became an officer, and I
Joel.
think he just recently retired, like not too long ago.
He's supposed to be on the show soon, but he hasn't signed up yet. So, oh, that reminds me, I got to do the segue. Listen, everybody, I'm still building out my schedule for 2025, and if I've talked to you about being on the show, I really want you to be on the show. But obviously, um, you know, sign up if you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay. Let's have a conversation. Maybe you can get comfortable. If you're still not comfortable, don't worry about it. But I really need to build out the schedule for the rest of the year. I have about, I think, I'm full up until June, so or early June. So if there's anybody out there, any of my connections, or maybe you're not a connection, if you want to come on the show, shoot me a message. Let's have a conversation, and then I'll send you the sign up, and we'll see how our schedules line up. But anyway, Mike, man, like I said, it was great having you on here. It's nice to have a fresh perspective because you're talking about your journey and all the different things that happened. There's so many things that like we try to plan for, but then there are other things that like just fall into place. And when they do, it's like, you gotta really be thankful for those things. Be grateful. This
Oh,
is a
for
great
sure.
this is a great month to be thankful, by the way. Next week
Like,
next week is Thanksgiving.
yeah,
But
exactly.
anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the stream. But Mike, don't go anywhere because I'm gonna talk to you in the studio
Okay,
afterward.
perfect. Yeah,
But
sounds good. I got time. Yeah.
all right, but
All right. Well,
everybody else,
hey, thanks again though for having me on. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. This was fun.
awesome. Yeah, anytime. Everybody else, we're gonna be off the air next week because it's Thanksgiving week. A lot of people will be traveling, hanging out with the family, but we'll come back on December 2, and our guest there is Jason Goodman. Jason is also a U.S. Air Force veteran. He and I went to NCO Academy back in the day here at Keesler Air Force Base. Yeah, in like August, September of 2010. So I've known him for a little bit. But hey, tune in 2 weeks, 6 p.m. Central Time. Shift the journey. Peace.